Luther once wrote that to be an historian is to have the heart of a lion. Why would he say such a thing? Well, it may be because historians, at least honest historians, are like forensic investigators. They don't know what they have until they've found it. We're going to approach this episode with that disposition. Instead of looking at Luther's life and thus his significance from a framework of questions and assumptions we want to explore, we're going to let Luther's own words and work provide us a portrait of what motivated him. In other words, we'll let you stand on your own. Tell us who you are. And one of the best ways to understand a person is to look at what occupies their time. So that's where we're going to start with you, Luther. Luther was a teacher. Specifically, he was a professor of the Bible. Even more specifically, he was a professor of the Old Testament. He began his studies at a monastery called the Black Cloister in Erfurt. In 1507, he began his theological studies and then moved to the University of Wittenberg to continue his studies in 1508. He was promoted to a doctor of theology in 1512. As such, as all professors did at that time, Luther took an oath of office, and his oath was to pursue and teach the truth. So, by his own vocation, one of Luther's lifelong pursuits was to pursue and teach the truth as set forth in the Christian scriptures. A second marker we can use to identify Luther is his vocation as a pastor, and by his own language and account, this was his passion. In 1505, he was ordained as a mass priest, a derogatory label used by Luther. But that did not make him a pastor. He was appointed sub-prior in 1512 in his monastery, where he became more involved in pastoral care for his fellow monks. At von Staupitz's insistence, a superior and a mentor to Luther, and over Luther's objections, he preached to his Augustinian brothers. In 1514, he became assistant to the ailing pastor at St. Mary's, the city church in Wittenberg, where he remained a preacher and pastor until his death in 1546. As a pastor, Luther's greatest concern was for those he was preaching to. If you follow through his writings, you'll see a constant emphasis on the care for souls. In other words, one of the red threads that runs through Luther's writings is his pastoral heart, and specifically his care for souls. As a result, as you read through his works, it becomes equally clear that Luther was also greatly concerned with the clear, true proclamation of the gospel, something we'll dig into in much more detail in other episodes. One important thing to note as we're talking about Luther is that he was like you and me. He learned as he went. We'll let Luther talk for himself on this by reading an excerpt from his preface to the Latin works from 1545. Martin Luther wishes the sincere reader salvation.
But above all else, I beg the sincere reader, and I beg for the sake of our Lord Jesus Christ himself, to read those things judiciously, yes, with great commiseration. May he be mindful of the fact that I was once a monk and a most enthusiastic papist when I began that cause. I was so drunk, yes, submerged in the Pope's dogmas, that I would have been ready to murder all if I could have, or to cooperate willingly with the murderers of all who would take but a syllable from obedience to the Pope. So you will find how much and what important matters I humbly conceded to the Pope in my earlier writings, which I later and now hold and execrate as the worst blasphemies and abomination. You will, therefore, sincere reader, ascribe this error, or, as they slander, contradiction to the time and my inexperience.
Clearly, Luther is saying he developed as he went. He was not a Lutheran out of the womb. In fact, he actually didn't understand himself to have anything new to bring to the church. The question we must ask then is this: why would he go through all that he went through? Keep that question in mind as you listen to other episodes and learn more about Luther as we let Luther speak for himself.
I like the sound of that.